Every cell in your body is hosting a life form that is not you, right now, and you cannot evict them, because without them, you stop in seconds. You learned in school that your body is made of cells, your cells, cells with your DNA, cells that are, in every meaningful sense, you. There are roughly 37 trillion of them, each one a sealed system, your genetic code running the machinery of your life. It sounds complete. It sounds like ownership, except it isn't. Inside almost every one of those 37 trillion cells, there are between 1,000 and 2,000 separate organisms. They have their own DNA. Not your DNA, their DNA, circular like bacteria, because that is exactly what they are. They divide on their own schedule. They reproduce independently of your cell cycle. They live. They die. They do all of this inside you around the clock for your entire life, and you have never once been aware of it. You call them mitochondria. But here is what that word hides. They are not a part of you. They are ancient life that moved in 1.5 billion years ago and simply never left. And the question that biology still cannot fully answer, the question that should keep you awake, is this. Who exactly made the deal, and who got the better end of it? If you could shrink to the size of a protein and slip inside a single one of your cells, the mitochondria would not look like components. They would look like living things. They are oblong, membrane-wrapped structures. Some elongated like worn river stones, others branching into networks that pulse and fuse and divide like a slow-motion tide. They move. They change shape. They cluster near the regions of highest energy demand, as if they know where they are needed. In muscle cells, they stack in tight columns along the contractile fibers, positioned to power every contraction. In neurons, they migrate down the axon toward the synaptic terminals, toward the exact moment where thought becomes signal. They are elegant in the way that ancient things are elegant, not designed, refined. By 1.5 billion years of pressure and time, and they are everywhere. Your body contains more mitochondria than there are stars in the Milky Way, by an order of magnitude. Every second, they are performing the most consequential chemistry in your body, stripping electrons from food molecules and using that energy to spin a protein turbine, literally spin it, mechanically, like an engine, to produce the molecule that powers every biological process you have ever experienced. It is extraordinary. It is the most sophisticated energy system that evolution has ever produced. And it is a foreign organism operating inside your body under terms that were never renegotiated. Right now, while you are watching this, your mitochondria are dying. Not all of them, but some, constantly. Because they are living things, and living things degrade. They accumulate damage, their membranes leak, their internal machinery misfires. A mitochondrion that is producing energy inefficiently is not just useless, it is dangerous. A damaged mitochondrion begins leaking reactive oxygen species, molecular fragments that tear through proteins, membranes, and DNA like sparks through dry paper. So your cells have a system to deal with them. It is called mitophagy, from the Greek for self-eating, and it is exactly what it sounds like. Your cell identifies the failing mitochondria, tags them, wraps them in a membrane sac, and destroys them, systematically, continuously. And then the surviving mitochondria divide, by binary fission, the same way bacteria divide, to replace them. This means that inside a single cell of yours, right now, there are mitochondria of different ages, different generations, a population. Some were born, if that word applies, recently. Others have been dividing since before you were born, their lineage continuous through the egg cell that became you, through your mother, through an unbroken chain of cellular inheritance stretching back through human evolution. Your cells are not static. They are ecosystems, and the organisms living in them are managing their own population dynamics, independent of you, according to rules that predate animals by over 1 billion years. But that is only what happens on the surface of this relationship. What lies underneath is where it becomes something else entirely. The medical consensus for most of the 20th century treated mitochondrial dysfunction as a rare, edge case problem, a category of unusual inherited diseases, mitochondrial myopathies, affecting a small number of patients with mutations in mitochondrial genes. Tragic, but contained. That consensus has been collapsing for 20 years. What researchers have come to understand, slowly, resistantly, because the implications are enormous, is that mitochondrial dysfunction is not a rare aberration. It is a central mechanism in some of the most prevalent and devastating diseases of modern human life. Parkinson's disease. The neurons that die first are the dopaminergic neurons of the substantia nigra. They are among the most metabolically demanding cells in the brain. They fire continuously, they require enormous amounts of ATP, and they depend almost entirely on mitochondrial function to survive. The proteins that cause Parkinson's, alpha-synuclein aggregates, target mitochondria directly. The neurons don't die from a lack of dopamine. They die because their mitochondria fail first. Alzheimer's disease. Amyloid beta, the protein that accumulates in Alzheimer's plaques, impairs mitochondrial function in neurons years before symptoms appear. The energy failure comes before the memory loss. The mitochondria collapse, and then the neuron follows. Type 2 diabetes. Skeletal muscle cells with impaired mitochondrial function develop insulin resistance. The cell cannot process glucose efficiently because the machinery that should turn glucose into energy is degraded. The sugar accumulates in the blood not because the pancreas failed first, in many cases, because the mitochondria in muscle did. And aging itself, not as a poetic metaphor but as a biological mechanism, is increasingly understood as, in part, the slow accumulation of mitochondrial damage across every tissue in the body. Mitochondrial DNA, unlike nuclear DNA, has no protective histones wrapped around it. It sits exposed, close to the electron transport chain where reactive oxygen species are constantly generated. It accumulates mutations at a rate roughly 10 times faster than nuclear DNA. And those mutations compound. Over decades, over a lifetime, the ancient organism living inside you is aging, and as it ages, it takes you with it. Here is where the story bends into something stranger. Your mitochondrial DNA is not inherited the way the rest of your genome is. Nuclear DNA comes from both parents, shuffled, recombined, a mosaic of two lineages. But mitochondrial DNA comes from only one source, your mother, exclusively. The mitochondria in a sperm cell are destroyed after fertilization by the egg's own cellular machinery, tagged for elimination as if they were foreign invaders. Which, technically, they are. What remains is a maternal lineage of mitochondrial DNA, unrecombined, transmitted intact from mother to child, generation after generation, accumulating mutations at a known and measurable rate. Geneticists recognize something in this, a molecular clock. Because mitochondrial DNA mutates steadily and is inherited without shuffling, you can trace it backward through human history with a precision that nuclear DNA cannot offer. And when researchers did, when they mapped mitochondrial DNA across thousands of living humans from every population on Earth, they converged on a single woman. Not the only woman alive at the time, not the first human woman, but the one woman from whom every living human today descends through an unbroken maternal line. She lived approximately 150,000 to 200,000 years ago, most likely in East Africa. She had daughters who survived through every famine, every migration, every extinction event that erased every other maternal line. The scientific community named her mitochondrial Eve. Every mitochondrion in your body carries her signature. A woman who lived before your species had language, possibly before your species fully existed, is encoded into the ancient bacteria living in your cells right now. The question that researchers are still working to understand is this: what else is encoded in that inheritance? Mitochondrial haplotypes, distinct lineages of mitochondrial DNA, are associated with different disease risk profiles, different metabolic efficiencies, different susceptibilities to neurodegeneration. The ancient organism inside you is not generic. It is a specific lineage, from a specific ancestral population, shaped by pressures your ancestors faced tens of thousands of years ago. And that lineage may be influencing your health in ways medicine is only beginning to map. We do not yet know how deep that influence goes. In 1966, a cell biologist named Lynn Margulis submitted a paper to 15 scientific journals. 14 of them rejected it. The paper proposed what she called the endosymbiotic theory, that mitochondria were not cellular components that had evolved from within. They were ancient bacteria that had been engulfed by a host cell and had, over evolutionary time, become integrated into it. She argued this from structural evidence, from biochemical evidence, from the striking similarity between mitochondrial ribosomes and bacterial ribosomes. She argued it carefully, with data. The scientific establishment called it fringe. Cell biology at the time was deeply committed to the view that the eukaryotic cell was a unified, internally generated system, not a chimera. The idea that you might be, at the cellular level, a partnership between two fundamentally different forms of life was philosophically unacceptable to many researchers. Margulis spent years defending the theory. She was dismissed in terms that, looking back, reveal more about institutional resistance to paradigm shifts than about the quality of her science. And then the genetic evidence began to arrive. In the 1970s and 1980s, as molecular biology tools improved, researchers sequenced mitochondrial DNA and found exactly what Margulis had predicted: a genome that looked bacterial, circular, with genes that matched proteobacteria, with ribosomes sensitive to the same antibiotics that kill bacteria. By 1998, the endosymbiotic theory was established fact in every major biology textbook on Earth. Lynn Margulis had been right. The cell biologists had been wrong. And the implication, the one that nobody had been ready to accept in 1966, was quietly inserted into the curriculum as if it had always been obvious. Because of her, we know what you are. Not one organism, a partnership, an ancient agreement, enforced not by contract, but by mutual dependency so complete that neither party can survive without the other. You are taught that you are a single living thing. One body, one genome, one self. But consider what you actually are. A host. A civilization built on a merger that happened before animals existed, before eyes existed, before anything on Earth had a nervous system to experience the world. A bacterium was swallowed and not destroyed. It stayed. It began producing energy for a cell that could not produce it alone. And over 5 billion years, the two became so entangled that the distinction between them stopped being meaningful. Except that it didn't, because the mitochondria still carry their own DNA, still divide by binary fission, still live and die on their own terms inside you right now. You have more mitochondria in your body than there are stars visible in the entire Milky Way. Each one a descendant of an organism that was ancient before the first animal took its first breath. You did not build them. You inherited them from your mother, who inherited them from hers, back through an unbroken chain to a woman who lived before your species had a name for itself. They do not think. They do not know you exist. They have no concept of the life they are sustaining, and yet without them, you end in seconds. Not minutes. Seconds. You are the only thing in the known universe that can contemplate its own existence. And you are only able to do that because of organisms that have never once contemplated anything at all. You are not a self. You are an ecosystem that learned to call itself one. Mitochondria need oxygen to do what they do. Every breath you take, is feeding them. But there is a process that those mitochondria, and every other part of you, ultimately depends on. A process so fundamental that without it, complex life would be impossible. And it requires something that sounds like the opposite of life. It requires your cells to destroy themselves, deliberately, on schedule. That is the next video. If you made it here, you already know that dark anatomy doesn't let you walk away with the same understanding of yourself you walked in with. Subscribe, because what comes next is the process happening inside you right now that you were never supposed to notice. Keep looking inward.